The train lights cut through the fog like ghostly eyes. Emma stood on an empty platform, her breath clouding in the cold night air as the digital clock above flickered 12:07 a.m. The sound came first, metal screeching against metal, slow, steady, and wrong. Then the whistle, low, mournful, like something crying out from another world. She stepped closer to the yellow line. Her ticket trembled in her hand. The sign beside her glowed faintly. Platform 3, midnight train to Norcross. But the timetable board kept glitching, letters flickering between on time and delayed. She had been waiting for more than 3 hours. Then, through the thick fog, she finally saw it, the shape of a train emerging from the dark tunnel. The headlights grew brighter, brighter, until she had to shield her eyes. The sound got louder, too, echoing through the valley and shaking the metal rails beneath her feet. Emma's heart raced as she backed away slightly, clutching her bag. But then she realized something that froze her in place. The train wasn't slowing down. It was coming at full speed, lights flashing, horn blaring, and yet, when it should have stopped, it didn't. It roared to the platform like a hurricane of steel and screams, wind whipping Emma's hair into her face. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone, swallowed by the fog again. No doors opened. No passengers stepped off. No trace of it remained. Only silence. Emma blinked hard, shaking. The clock above her flickered again. 12:07 a.m. It hadn't moved a second. The rails were still vibrating beneath her feet. She turned to look for the old station master, but the booth was empty. The ticket window was closed. And yet she could have sworn she saw someone inside just a moment ago. A tall man in a conductor's uniform, standing perfectly still behind the glass. She took a shaky step toward the window. "Hello," she whispered. The fog outside the platform thickened until she couldn't even see the tracks anymore. She leaned closer to the booth, squinting through the glass. A face appeared on the other side, pale, lifeless eyes staring back at her. Emma stumbled backward, tripping over her suitcase. The lights above her flickered wildly, then died, plunging the platform into total darkness. And then through the black, she heard it again, the same whistle, distant this time, fading into nothing. She whispered to herself, voice trembling, "Where did it go?" No one answered. Earlier that day, Emma had never planned to take the last train. She hated late-night travel, especially through the small towns between Boston and Norcross. Her friends always joked that the Norcross line was cursed, but she didn't believe in ghost stories. Still, when her grandmother passed away that morning, she had no choice but to catch the midnight train home. The small-town station was almost empty when she arrived. Just a few flickering lamps and one sleepy old ticket clerk who barely looked up when she handed him her money. "Last train's late again," he said gruffly. "Always is. Been like that for years." She smiled politely. "How late are we talking?" He shrugged, stamping her ticket. "Could be an hour. Could be never. You wait long enough. Maybe it shows." Emma frowned. What's that supposed to mean? But he didn't answer. He just slid her ticket through the glass, eyes fixed somewhere far behind her, as if watching something in the distance. She walked out onto the platform, dragging her suitcase behind her. The sound of the rails clicked quietly under her feet as she looked down the long, empty track. The fog rolled in thick, even though the forecast had promised clear skies. At first, she scrolled through her phone to pass the time, but the signal kept dropping. No bars. Not even a single flicker of Wi-Fi. The town seemed cut off from the world. An old vending machine beside the bench hummed faintly, its screen flickering between static and the words, "Thank you for choosing Norcross Station." She laughed nervously and pressed the buttons, but it didn't work. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, heavy ones. "Train's running late tonight," said a deep voice behind her. Emma turned. It was a man in a dark trench coat and an old-fashioned conductor's hat. His face was partly hidden by the brim, but his eyes glowed faintly under the yellow light. "Yes," she said. "The clerk said it might not come at all. Do you work here?" He smiled thinly. "I used to." She laughed softly. "Used to." But he didn't answer right away. Instead, He walked to the edge of the platform and looked down the tracks. Most folks don't wait long enough. The train doesn't like to be rushed. The train doesn't like to be rushed? She repeated. What does that even mean? He turned to her slowly. It only stops for those who belong on it. Emma's skin prickled. Okay, that's creepy. The man tilted his head. You said you're going to Norcross? Yes. Family emergency. His smile faded. Then you'll see soon enough. Before she could ask more, he turned and walked toward the fog until he disappeared completely. She called after him, but there was no response. Emma sat back down, uneasy now. Maybe he was some crazy local trying to scare travelers. She texted her friend Sarah, but again, no signal. The message just spun endlessly. Sending. Hours passed. The clock ticked closer to midnight. And then she heard it, metal against metal, echoing faintly through the dark. Her heart leapt. She stood and walked to the edge of the platform. The sound grew louder, clearer. A faint glow appeared at the far end of the tunnel. The midnight train to Norcross was finally coming. But as the light grew brighter, she saw something strange. The shape of the train wasn't sleek and modern. It looked old, like something out of a black and white movie. Rusted metal, smoky windows, flickering lights. And yet, despite its age, it moved fast. Too fast. Emma waved her arms, trying to signal it to stop. The wind from its speed whipped across her face as it rushed closer, closer, until she saw the faces in the windows. They were all staring straight ahead. Still, expressionless, pale. Not one of them blinked. The horn screamed. Emma ducked as the train roared past, nearly knocking her off her feet. The sound was deafening, like hundreds of voices whispering all at once. She covered her ears and screamed, but when she opened her eyes again, the train was gone. She stood there, trembling, staring into the empty tunnel. And then she saw movement, something small, fluttering down from the air. She reached out and caught it. A train ticket, yellowed and burned at the edges. It read, Passenger, Emma Grace Winters. Destination, Norcross. Departure, 12:07 a.m. She dropped it instantly. It wasn't possible. She hadn't been on that train. She was standing right there when it passed. Then, behind her, the ticket booth light flickered on again. And there, through the window, stood the man in the conductor's hat, his pale eyes fixed directly on her. Time to board, Miss Winters, he whispered through the glass. Emma spun around. The fog was moving toward her now, fast, like it was alive. The sound of the whistle screamed again, echoing through the night. The ground began to tremble beneath her feet, as if the rails were waking up. She dropped her suitcase and ran for the exit, but the sign above the gate had changed. It no longer said exit. It now read, Boarding platform, the train that never arrives. And behind her, she could hear the approaching rumble again. Louder, closer. The train was coming back. Only this time, it wasn't going to pass by. The sound came before the light, a low, deep rumble that made the platform tremble like it was breathing. Emma froze, suitcase forgotten by her feet. The fog around her started to pull inward, drawn toward the tracks as if the air itself was being sucked into the tunnel. Then came the whistle, long, slow, sad. She stepped backward, heart hammering in her chest. No, she whispered to herself. No, no, no. The rails began to glow faintly red, like embers beneath the steel. The clock above her flickered again, 12:07 a.m. It hadn't moved even a second. The fog parted just enough for her to see the outline of the train again, tall, black, and old-fashioned, its surface gleaming like wet coal. The windows were dark this time, but behind them, shadows shifted as if people were standing inside, waiting. Emma gripped the railing, backing away toward the stairwell. She told herself she'd run the second she could, but her legs wouldn't move. It was like something had locked her in place. The train slowed this time. The brakes hissed. The wind carried the smell of burning oil and iron. The front of the train came to a stop right in front of her, and then the door opened. A puff of steam burst out, curling around her like cold fingers. From inside, she heard voices, dozens of them, Some whispered her name. Emma, Emma Grace Winters. Her stomach turned to ice. "Who's there?" she called, voice cracking. A light flickered inside one of the carriages, revealing pale faces behind the glass. Passengers sitting perfectly still, staring forward. None of them blinked. None of them breathed. She could see the man in the conductor's hat now, standing in the doorway. "You're late," he said softly. His voice echoed oddly, stretching too long, like it wasn't coming from him at all, but from every direction at once. Emma's throat felt dry. "I'm not getting on that thing," she said. The conductor tilted his head. "You already did." Her heart stopped. "What?" He stepped aside, motioning to the seats inside. "Take a look." Against every ounce of sense she had, Emma inched closer, peering through the steam-filled doorway. The air inside shimmered strangely, like heat over asphalt. And there, halfway down the aisle, she saw herself. Her own face, her same coat, her same red scarf, sitting perfectly still with her hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead. Emma stumbled backward, shaking her head violently. "That's not real," she screamed. "That's not me." The conductor didn't move. "All passengers ride until arrival," he said calmly. "And this train never arrives." The door slammed shut. The train's lights flashed, flooding the fog with blinding white. Emma shielded her eyes, stumbling toward the stairs. But when she turned back, the train was gone. No sound, no light, just a faint hiss of the fog creeping back in. She stood there shaking for a long time, gripping the cold metal railing until her knuckles turned white. Then she heard a voice behind her. "Miss Winters?" She turned sharply. The old ticket clerk stood near the vending machine, holding a small lantern. His face looked even paler now, eyes sunken, voice hoarse. "Where did you go?" he asked. "You weren't supposed to wander off." "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "That train just—" He cut her off with a slow shake of his head. "You shouldn't talk about it." Emma frowned. "What do you mean I shouldn't talk about it?" "A train just passed through the station without stopping. It nearly killed me." The old man sighed and looked down. "It didn't pass through," he said quietly. "It stopped. It always stops. For the ones it wants." Emma stepped back. "No, you don't understand. It was empty, except for—" She trailed off, remembering the image of herself sitting inside. The man watched her carefully. "You saw her, didn't you?" Her breath caught. "Saw who?" "Yourself." The words hit her like a punch. The man lifted the lantern slightly, and in the glow, she could see his name badge. Station Master Harlan Reeves. The metal tag was rusted, the letters faded. He took a deep breath. It happens every few years. Someone gets stuck waiting for the last train to Norcross. They always see it, always think they escaped it. But no one ever leaves the station once the train calls their name. Emma stared at him, shaking her head. "That's crazy. You're crazy." "Then tell me," he said softly. "What time is it?" She looked up at the clock. Still 12:07 a.m. Her stomach twisted. "That clock's broken," she muttered. He nodded slowly. "No, you are." The words made her freeze. "What did you just say?" The old man's eyes softened. "Do you remember when you got here?" "Of course," she said. "A few hours ago." "And before that," he pressed. "How did you get here?" Emma frowned, trying to remember. She could picture the cab she took from the city, the road winding to the woods, but then nothing. The memory just stopped. The silence between them grew heavy. Then the faint sound of wheels on rails echoed again. Her head snapped toward the tracks. "No," she whispered. "No, not again." Harlan looked at her sadly. "It always comes back." Emma grabbed her bag and ran toward the exit, but the gate was closed again. She shook it, slammed her shoulder against it, but it wouldn't move. The fog behind her glowed faintly now, the outline of the train's headlight pushing through. She turned back, tears filling her eyes. "Please," she begged, "help me." The station master's face was unreadable. "I can't," he said. "You're already on it." The whistle screamed again, louder this time, shaking the platform. The light swallowed her vision, and when she opened her eyes, she was no longer on the platform. She was inside the train. The seats were filled with silent passengers, every one of them pale and motionless, eyes staring blankly forward. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the train were alive. Emma's heart pounded as she stood, looking down the aisle. Her reflection stared back at her from the window, except it wasn't her reflection. It smiled. Then the voice came through the speakers, warped and hollow. Next stop, Norcross. Emma turned toward the door, pounding on it, screaming for help, but outside was nothing but fog. Endless, glowing fog. The train began to move again, slow and steady, deeper into the dark. And as it rolled forward, she saw something new through the window, the faint outline of the station disappearing behind her, and the figure of the old man waving, not goodbye, but in warning. The lights flickered. The announcement repeated. Next stop, Norcross. But deep down, Emma knew that stop would never come.